Hiya, thanks for listening today. On the 10th of March, I spoke to Brea Grant and Natasha Kermani about their surreal satire Lucky. Brea wrote the screenplay and stars in the lead role. Just in the last year or so, Brea has written, directed and released another excellent genre caper called 12-Hour Shift, appeared in Jill Gevargizian's superb horror film The Stylist, and another recent favourite of mine, After Midnight, so it was a real treat to speak to her. Lucky is the second feature film Natasha has directed after the beguiling sci-fi flick Imitation Girl, which stars Lauren Ashley Carter. It's brilliant and you should check it out. That same day, I spoke to Brea and Natasha. Alarming statistics about sexual harassment towards women were reported in The Guardian. Stalking, violence and intimidation of women is part of what Lucky is examining as it smartly toys with the tropes of the slasher film and The Final Girl. In the film, the final girl has essentially matured into an exhausted woman in her 30s who is tackling a daily onslaught of violence and dismissal. Brea Grant talks about her personal experience of stalking in this interview. I'll read you the statistics from the Guardian report. Virtually all young women in the UK have been subjected to sexual harassment, according to a survey from UN Women UK, which warns that most women have lost faith that the abuse will be dealt with. Among women aged 18 to 24, 97% said they had been sexually harassed, while 80% of women of all ages said they have experienced sexual harassment in public spaces. A couple of things to note as you listen is that we speak about George Cukor's Gaslight, and like the idiot I am, I refer to it as the 1930s film. It was actually released in 1944, and I highly recommend you check it out. Also, you may find it triggering to listen to us talk about violence against women. We also touch upon the Brett Kavanaugh hearings and the testimony from Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. I hope you find something worthwhile in our conversation, and please do feel free to reach out on social media if you want to chat about any of the topics we cover. Thanks again. Enjoy.
Let's do this. We are being attacked in our homes and in our friends' homes every goddamn day for the rest of our lives. There's no rationalizing it. There's no saving us. I'm not scared of you.
So it looks like you had a lot of fun shooting Lucky, but I'm assuming obviously there's a lot of hard work on a small budget as well. So can you take me through the production and kind of any of the highlights, or kind of what was the most chaotic day and what was the best day sort of thing?
You know, we had such a great team. I was fortunate enough to work with a lot of my repeat crew, and then Brea also has an incredible network of people. A lot of the actors were from Brea's world, which was great, and I think having that kind of shorthand with your cast and crew it really makes everything just a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah.
We love to meet new people, obviously, but it's great to sort of have your friends with you. We shot the movie very fast. We shot the movie in 15 days, so it was definitely like a sprint. Once we started, it was like go, go, go. So we really tried to prep as much as possible, and that's really the key, was that we definitely had a plan, and of course things come up and plans change, but I'd say overall it was pretty smooth. We didn't do a lot of overtime. Brea definitely had the heaviest. She's in every scene of the movie, basically every shot. So, I think, and actors, it's tough. They have to come in super early and get their makeup done and the hair and all that. So, I don't know, Brea, if you want to speak to the cast experience.
Yeah, but as an actor, but it's nothing shocking. And honestly, as an actor, the hardest thing is waiting around, and I didn't do a lot of waiting around with this movie. So, and it was interesting because, most of the actors came in for a day or 2 days or something. I think Drew was there for 3 days. It's like very little amount of time. So it was sort of strange because it felt like I didn't do a lot of actor bonding, where you normally get to hang out with the actors and to talking to them for so long. And it was much more just like me and the crew every single day. It was a little bit of a different vibe than I feel like other films I've been on.
It's true. It's really May traveling through I always think of the movie as like Alice in Wonderland, where you're moving through these bizarre people, and so it was a very just like a great cast of wacky LA actors that were. It was like the circus was in town, you know, and we would like shuffle through new acts as we went.
Hey.
I also want to say this was the most women I've had on set, specifically the most women heads of department, which was really special for both of us, and we really enjoyed that, and we hope to do that again. So.
Can I just ask, do you do your own editing, or is it, do you have a...
I work with an editor. Yeah, I work with an editor. I find that collaboration very, very important. And my process is usually to let the editor take it and actually start to do an assembly on his or her own. And then I come in about 2 weeks later into the process and then pull everything apart and redo it, but we sit together and we do it together. But I like to have somebody else come to the material. With Lucky, actually, our editor is a man, which I thought was really interesting and kind of important to have an outside viewpoint in and say like, hey, does this make sense? Obviously, there's still a lot of the movie that is maybe a stretch to access for people who don't identify with May's experience. But I think having him as part of the process was honestly really, really helpful for putting it all together. Was
there anything kind of beloved that ended up on the cutting room floor?
Always.
Oh.
There's always stuff. I mean, with such a short, sort of like quick movie, there is very little that you're going to cut in 15 days. But there are a few things that I liked. There's like just some cool shots that we had to cut short, or little interstitial moments. Brea, there's the one big thing that we cut was the conversation between May and Ted at the dishwasher.
Okay.
It like slowed down the momentum, and like we were kind of having trouble like fitting it in, and it just felt better to just like have a smoother opening sequence. So that got reshuffled. The order of things got reshuffled at the beginning of the movie. But no, for the most part, it was like what's on the script is what we shot, is what ended up in the edit.
Okay, so let's talk about the title of the film. So was that the title from day one, and did you have any discussions about changing the title?
Yeah, that was the title in the original script, and there were a lot of discussions about changing the title because it's, in this day and age, you have to worry about whether or not something is Googleable and whether or not something can be hashtagged or whatever, this is kind of the anti of that movie, so I feel like we just never really cared that much. I mean, there's other movies called Lucky, just a movie I love called Lucky, and I think Natasha and I talked a lot about it. We talked a lot with our producers, and just at the end of the day, there wasn't a title that felt right besides Lucky, because it just worked on so many levels, and it just always made the most sense for the movie. It's been called that, I think, since I started writing it.
And there's so many different interpretations of the word. It's really loaded. And also we made the choice I do this with most of my work, but the title card doesn't appear till the end of the movie. And it's almost like a postscript. So it's like you experience it, and then the title is like a postscript to the, it's an epilogue to the movie that you just watched, and sort of like one word that encapsulates the whole thing. And I did that with my first film as well, and I just kind of like it so people can kind of form their own opinion. I think titles are so loaded, and when you see all those words at the beginning of a movie, it's like, what's going on? I don't care who these people are, just start the movie. And I think Lucky as a word, as the sort of like epilogue to the movie that you've just experienced, works very well and actually opens up, the conversation. You can start to see the movie as like leading up to that jump off point. And then now, the conversations can happen and things can come out of it. So we love the title. I love the title.
Oh, I was listening to when it showed at Fantasia, where I saw it, I was listening to the Q&A with you, and Britney Spears was mentioned in that. Is that true?
Hashtag free Britney.
Yeah. Well, we've all seen the documentary, right? We've all seen it.
Yeah. No, that's totally a joke.
Okay. Good. Okay, I was just checking.
It would have definitely been my karaoke song if South by had happened and we went to karaoke afterwards. But, so the world missed out on that.
Okay. So today I'm going to just ask a couple of kind of broader questions and then get back into the kind of meat of the film, if that's okay with you. Today I read a depressing statistic that women in their 30s are the most discriminated against in the workplace, and 60% of women in their 30s report opportunity stalling, the highest of any age group in the working place. Have you experienced much of that in your career, and have you ever noticed any doors closing or opportunities dwindling?
Damn.
I could together about this all day.
Damn, that's just going to be the answer.
You have a lot of thoughts on this.
I will say this: like, it is so helpful having other women in the film industry friends, because we can text each other and be like, and like let off the steam, because we know this has happened to us, or we're told sometimes, like, look, you're talking about problems that come from years and years of not having women behind the camera, right? So of course they're going to be anyone can always say to me or Natasha or pretty much any other women our age or even older, I think this probably extends into your 40s and 50s, that you don't have experience, right? Because we haven't been given the opportunities to have the experience. So yes, that's something people are always going to be able to bring up and hire someone who has been doing it longer, who was born a man and remained a man and kept and identifies as a man and kept making movies as a man through his entire career. He's going to get more opportunities, because it wasn't until the last 5 or 10 years we started paying attention to women and trying to tell these stories. Yeah. So, yeah, I think Natasha and I can literally, write you a little doc of the times this has happened, and I can tell you the times this happened to her and the times this happened to my friends. That's a sad ending to that sentence. That was the end, though.
Well, I think that's what Lucky kind of encapsulates that feeling of, fear, frustration, exhaustion at a system that's designed to not, favor women.
Catherine, I think one of the things, obviously there's a really overt metaphor for violence against women in this film, but it is also the systemic exhaustion that women go through, because we bust ass so hard through our 20s that by the time we get to our 30s, we're so tired. And now we're also supposed to be starting families and putting our homes together, and it's so much. And so I think that is the second layer to May's experience, is that she is a career woman and she busted ass to get herself to that point. And now she's trying to get to the next level. And that's why we chose one very important change that we made to the script, is that her second book is actually not doing well. And so this is a woman who got herself to a certain level, and suddenly it's not working anymore, right? She needs to reinvent herself. She needs to shift herself. And she's exhausted. She's fucking tired, and I think that's very relatable, and that is just as important as the other conversations in the film. And I also need to say, this pandemic has revealed a lot. It's revealed a lot of how women are not prioritized in our society, and the rate at which women, especially women of color, are leaving the workforce is a huge problem, and it's something that we're going to have to contend with. Our generation is going to have to contend with that. We've taken many steps backwards in the last year. And so we can talk about the film industry. It's incredibly important. Visibility is incredibly important. Seeing women like Brea publicly, at the front of a movie is incredibly important. But we also need to remember all the other industries that are more important. Right? Like people working in hospitality, in the food industry. Those are women who are working, and they're leaving the workforce, and that's a real problem. So that's my soapbox.
Okay, so on the opposite end of the spectrum, I guess, on a positive note, has Lucky opened any doors on its release for you? Anything happened there?
We're really, really, really pleasantly surprised, I guess, at the critical response to the film. I think it's incredibly exciting for us, because we knew that women were going to love the movie. And respond to it, or even if they don't love it, they were going to get something out of it and want to talk about it. But having sort of the really positive reviews from really well-respected publications and reviewers and critics has been really, really, really gratifying. So I think that's one really great thing. And even, honestly, even the arguments, seeing people get into Twitter fires with each other has been kind of great, because that's the point of the movie. It's talk about this stuff. So, doors opening, I don't know if it's that easy.
I was really happy to see that the Guardian gave you a 4-star review. So congratulations. That must have been really exciting as well.
Yeah, wild. Yeah, it's exciting to see like people understand the movie on a broader level too.
Yeah.
I think like I had a lot of fears that people were going to sort of just like dismiss it as like, oh, it's the horror movie that came out this week that stars a woman and she's screaming and running for her life, and that was like definitely not the movie I was writing, and it wasn't the movie I think Natasha was attempting to make. So that is like very exciting.
Agreed.
Great. So on the I listened to Natasha on a podcast that I always listen to, Switchblade Sisters, talking about Strange Days. So, like, talking about you said kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of want to examine violence in society, I guess. And obviously Strange Days is quite explicit in how it does this. And I feel like Lucky veers away from that to kind of look at the impact, the greater impact as a whole. So yeah, can you just talk to me, like the psychological toll as well, and like pain being diminished. So can you talk to me more about like how and why you want to examine violence in society and through your filmmaking?
Yeah, and not to glorify it. I mean, I think that was really important for us as well with Lucky, is that even to the point of hiring a woman stunt coordinator, right, and making sure that May was not like this super cool, awesome superhero, like sexy moves, that it was actually very grounded and not glorified in that way, I think is incredibly important. I think that there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of brutality in our society, and we don't like to think about it. My dad is an ER physician, and so I think my whole life, I really was very aware of the uglier parts of our society that, are sort of discarded and end up very often in the emergency room. I know this seems like a total veer off from your question, but I promise it comes back around. There are people in our society who face, they hold the line between what we go through every single day as a society and what we think is our civilized life. And there is such a tiny, thin layer between our day-to-day and the just total chaos and brutality of our base instincts. Yeah. Be it, our propensity for addiction, our propensity for violence, sort of these uglier sides of ourselves. And I think and this is what horror does so well, right? It exercises those elements and talks about those parts of ourselves. And I think film has a really unique, it has a unique way of starting these conversations and having these conversations because it is experiential. So you can, really be in the shoes of an addict or a victim of violence or someone who's struggling. And no news article is going to do that. You have to be in the emergency room, seeing this pain that people are dealing with. Anyway, that's my interest. I think it's very real, and I think unless we talk about it, it is something, like it or not, that we all pay for. We pay our taxes. Where do you think those taxes go? It is a part of our society, and if we continue to turn away from it, it will just fester. And we need to talk about it.
Definitely, yeah. And as you say about like horror has always kind of been at the front line for discussing topics that people kind of shy away from. So excellent. Brea, I read that you took inspiration from real life, and I'm sorry to hear about your experiences. But what you've also done is you've channeled like that into a form that toys with slasher tropes and kind of the final girl in such a smart way. Firstly, I think the final girl has matured into a woman who is like totally exhausted dealing with daily threat violence. So can you tell me about the process of writing the screenplay and the final girls or slasher films that maybe you've watched over your life that may have had an impact on the screenplay?
Yeah, I think I started writing screenplay. I'm always writing something or another, but obviously felt really close to me, and it felt like something. At the time I was sort of dealing with the fallout of having a stalker and dealing with the judicial system and talking to detectives on a regular basis. So all this stuff was like front and like very present in my mind. And even like at the time I had moved in with a couple of roommates, and I had to be like, hey, I have this situation. Here's like my restraining order against this person. If he shows up, I don't know what you do. You can't just throw this restraining order in his face. But what really struck me was that when I would tell people about that, because I had to, or just when it would come up, and I'm not a person who talks about this stuff a lot, and that I kind of have in common with May, where I tend to like try to deal with everything like that myself. I found that women were just kind of like, right, yeah, I've been through this, or they could give me advice, or at the very least they related in some way. They were like, oh yeah, I had this guy in college, whatever, like they had some situations. So I think for me, that all kind of played into the screenplay. It wasn't just my experience. It was like the experience of all these women that I started talking to. And anytime I mean, all of these interviews, Natasha will tell you, every woman is like, right, yeah, I know. Like you have some experience you can point to where you were in danger. Yeah. Which is pretty horrifying. And then it went to a couple other places, and I got a lot of notes back that were very like, didn't necessarily understand the script. I even got a note back at one point where someone was like, can in the opening be a scene with sexual violence? Because they thought that would like really propel May. And I was like, there's enough happening here. We don't have to propel May with a rape scene, essentially is what they wanted. So there was a lot of people who misunderstood the script, I think. But then I found a nice place with it at Epic, and with Natasha and some producers that really seemed to understand the point of it. And as far as movies, I mean, there's a ton of movies that play into it. I love indie horror, and I love older horror. A movie that I think I pulled from without really meaning to is a movie called Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, which has like similar like gaslighty, vibes. And I watched some older movies that had a lot of gaslighting. I watched the original movie. Is it called Gaslighting? Is that the name?
The Gaslight is the old 1930s film. Yeah.
So I watched some of those like for research, but a lot of it was me just playing with like those typical slashers that I had seen my whole life. Like all the Friday the 13th, and I mean I'm in a Halloween movie. Yeah. Like those kind of movies, and like what would really happen to these women? They would be exhausted. They would not. By day 2 of like after the night happens, you would not. If the guy came back, I don't know what woman would be like, and I'm gonna fight him again. I feel like most women would be like, I'm done. Like this is gonna be the end for me. Thank you. Yeah.
And May, you also mentioned the name.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. And May is named after Angela Bettis's character in the movie May, which I think is an amazing movie. I mean, I think, like, as artists and as writers, we're always pulling from crap, and then people are like, what about this movie? And I'm like, oh, you're right, I did pull from that movie, and a lot of it doesn't even dawn on me half the time.
Well, I guess that kind of leads me on to a more kind of meatier question, and I'll come back again to the film. So, like, on the subject of kind of, like, influences and stuff, and maybe intersectional feminism as well, were there any particular kind of cultural things like books, articles, music, films that you've digested throughout your life that's kind of cemented like how equity isn't like readily available to women? Sort of thing. Like, when was the first kind of seminal moment almost that like maybe a piece of culture kind of explained to you what was happening?
This is not the first thing, but it is interesting context. Maybe when I was reading the script for the first time, the Brett Kavanaugh hearings were happening in the background, and that was sort of like the news cycle at the time. And that was obviously dredging up a lot of shit for a lot of women, including myself. And so that was sort of the cultural context, I guess, in which I was lucky, which was pretty apropos. I mean, it was exactly what the movie is about in a lot of ways. Women being believed, women being gaslit, their trauma being marched in front of everybody, for what reason. I would also say the first time as a young adult when I was told to not get married and to not have kids if I wanted a career. That really shook me to my core, because I plan on getting married and I plan on having children and having a family. So that really shook me. And I was like 19 or 20, which is such a horrible thing to say to a young woman. That's a horrible thing to say. And here I am, I'm 32 years old, and I'm just now getting those things together. And, I think that really fed into it. I was very scared of that stuff because it had been told to me so many times, don't, basically be a man, right? Like, just do what men do on their career path. You can have your boyfriends or girlfriends, whatever, but, don't get pregnant, don't get married.
And
that's crazy anyway.
Yeah, I think I was really fortunate because I grew up, I'm a little older than Natasha, and I grew up in the 90s, and I was I started listening to punk music on the trail end of the Riot Grrrl movement. So I remember someone giving me a mixtape with Bratmobile and Bikini Kill and a bunch of spoken word on it, and listening to the spoken word and being like, what is this? Because I was familiar with like bigger punk bands and even political punk bands, because where I grew up, it was a pretty political scene, but much more like animal rights kind of that world of hardcore punk. And these girls were in that scene at the time, and I was young. I was like 14, 15, and I would catch a ride with my brother to these shows, and these girls would like make zines who were like 17, 18 and give us zines, and it blew my mind. And I'm from a very small town in East Texas. It's quite conservative, very traditional gender roles. And I think that was just such a moment where I was like, the world is bigger than this. I learned to play drums. I started a band. I played in a punk band all through my teens. And I was like, this is what I can do something beyond what I think I've seen up until this point. Which is why, I think visibility is so important. I didn't know that stuff existed because I was, I didn't even have the internet. So that's like how, I'm almost 40. So, and I'm from a small town. But, so I had to find out these things in this very specific way. And it was so eye-opening. And I don't remember who that girl was who handed me that first zine, but she's basically responsible for my career at
That's lovely. Okay, so I kind of just wanted to talk about the collaboration between you two. So obviously, Natasha was saying the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, when the script landed with you, it kind of like chimed with you. Can you just tell me more about like when you did decide to collaborate, what kind of conversations you had? What were were there any changes that you made? Like, did it like kind of bring up any kind of talking points of discussions that you thought that maybe you hadn't thought of?
Yeah, there was a lot. The first thing I want to say though is like I really want to highlight that this movie was a collaboration between two women on the topic of visibility, because I think there's a lot of competition that's fostered by society between women. And so it's very healthy, I think, to see women collaborating in a healthy, productive way. So that's the most important thing, I think, that came out of our collaboration is actually that it happened. Yeah. When the movie happened and it came out, and, if anything, I feel like I came into this working relationship with a lot of respect for Brea, and I have even more now, and I can't wait to collaborate again. So I think that that's very important to see that it's possible, and also with all the other women on the set as well. But yeah, I think the Brea, had to, think about, okay, this is my story. Am I ready to step into the role, right? Like, she had already processed the writing, and so I think the next step was that, and then just getting the script production ready, really, and just having very open conversations about, what made sense, what didn't make sense. Pretty logistical conversations, to be honest. I think we were on the same page.
Yeah, totally. What's nice about when you work with someone who's a professional like Natasha is that I felt really comfortable that she was going to take charge of things and work her magic. And I'm a strong believer in having a captain at the ship. Like, you need a singular voice once you get to the process of production. And like, my voice is in the script. I worked on the script. I did what I could do, but I think of that as one piece of art. And then the movie is a different piece of art. And like, whatever it is what Natasha wants it to be and is trying to make. And she came in with so many strong ideas and so many opinions that I could see the movie already immediately. Once you made like a lookbook early on, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, this is so much cooler than what someone else would have done.
That's version. I didn't want that to be your response. I also think, I was listening to a radio program the other day that was talking about bringing more women into, it was looking at, not to open up this can of worms, but alternatives to policing alternatives in new communities. And it was a mayor of a town who in New York who was looking at alternatives, and he was talking about bringing more women into resolution roles, right? So like conflict resolution roles, and just how it's seen over and over and over again how women have again a propensity for de-escalation. and you know, for whatever reason, I think it's a little bit easier for us to put our egos aside sometimes and focus on the task at hand. And so I think that's really key. Is it's not about, you know, my mark on things, you know, pissing all over the project and making it a Natasha Kermani film. It's what's best for the project. How is this going to work for both of us and have like a really great piece that we can all move forward with. So putting ego aside is really key.
Yeah. Lucky is available to watch now on Shudder in the UK and worldwide.